probate and trust, negotiation, digital marketing, psychology, for gosh sakes. Those skills need to be developed or you are not going to last through this.
Welcome to the Real Estate Coffee House. Today's feature is Small Batch Marketplace with Gwen Daubenmeyer. Michael and Gwen have a spot saved for you at their table. Enjoy the chat. Welcome to the Real Estate Coffee House podcast. I am Michael Thorne of Remax Lifestyles Realty and the Thorne Maisie Bongars Real Estate Group in Langley, BC. Today's guest carries a flame in one hand and a fire hose in the other. She holds a deep personal grudge against mediocrity. She is the team leader at the Integrity Team at Keller Williams Paint Creek in Somerset in Detroit, Michigan. My guest is Gwen Daubenmeyer. Thanks, Gwen, for being my guest today.
Oh, good morning. So fun to be here.
If people don't know Gwen, you're about to meet her and you'll fall in love with her. It doesn't take much to fall in love with Gwen. Gwen and I are going to pour over what it takes to survive and thrive in this new market. But first, the news.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Each week, we take a few minutes with our guests to dig into a real estate news story. And Gwen, this news story popped into my news feed, I think yesterday or the day before. Time magazine has released the world's 50 greatest places for 2022, and Detroit, Michigan on the list of the 50 greatest places. It was great timing having you on, and that sort of being your area where you spend a lot of your life. I love a comeback story, and the city's been through so much. Does it make the good times even sweeter?
Oh, it absolutely does. So I'm in the suburbs north of Detroit. Detroit proper is about 45 minutes for me, but everything that Detroit does affects everybody in the entire state. So I don't care where you're from in the state of Michigan, you are from Detroit and rooting for Detroit and a fan of Detroit. And it means the world. I think that we've had some leaders in politics that have taken advantage of the city and not managed it properly, and to see the rebound and the regrowth in the restaurants and learning our way around again, because before you just didn't go down there very much. There wasn't anything to go down there for. Now it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's great. We're super happy.
And it's going to tie into what we're talking about today, going through those hard times, learning lessons from it, and then growing from it. Obviously, things like that impact the real estate industry where people want to work, and now too as well with remote working. Are you seeing any impact in the suburbs with Detroit coming back, where a lot of the employees might be doing 3 or 4 days in the suburbs and a couple days in town? Has that technology impacted where you do your business?
It sure has. When people are looking for houses, it used to be the number one thing was commute. Commute to downtown or commute to, wherever they are. And now that's really not the case. In fact, it's more lifestyle. That's what our team preaches. It's not just about the pre-approval letter. It's about the lifestyle. Protect your lifestyle because life is short. So live where you want to do life.
The pouring of a fresh cup means we're moving on to the main topic of today's chat with Gwen Daubenmeyer. Now, Gwen, I don't mean to spoil it for you, but at the end of the podcast, we have this fun little rapid fire round called Been There, Done That. I'm big on the puns. And we've been asking the same 7 questions to all of our guests here in season 1. Question number 2 on that rapid fire round is this. What advice would you give an agent who's never experienced a dramatic market shift to help them get the most out of a changing market? Now, the vast majority of the answers that we've received from our guests so far has been sit down and talk to an experienced agent who's been through it before. And that's exactly what this podcast is going to be about, to sit down with an experienced agent who's been through it all before. I went through the 2008-2009 Great Recession here outside of Vancouver, Canada. It was a tough 6-7 months. The 2009 was our best year ever to date. But what we went through outside Vancouver was nothing what you went through in 2008, 2009 outside Detroit. So before we dig into advice to agents of how they should approach this, if we are to pick the brain of an agent who's been through it before, talk about going through it before.
I thought that first we should probably say this is my 36th year doing it. So when I got to 2008, 2009, I was a very experienced agent, successful by industry measurements. And I thought I knew what I was doing, and I was doing everything right. I didn't carry debt. I saved my money. I put a large amount of money in investments, et cetera. And then it hit, and it wasn't enough. And I didn't respond fast enough. And I made big, huge mistakes. And I almost went out of business. And then there's personal stress that comes with that too, right? So there's effects there. Right now, I'm prepared, and it would be to overreact and be dramatic about this. Because let's face it, Michael, if an agent is listening right now and they got their license after 2009, they're new here. And so what they're reading is stuff that somebody else is writing about it. So it may or may not be accurate.
It's very interesting you say that, because when 2008, 2009 was happening, my wife and I just had our second kid. We just bought a new home, and I was really worried about tomorrow and almost paralyzed, not knowing what to do. And I told the story in a previous episode. There was an agent in my office named Wayne who was like literally skipping down the hallways. And I said, "What do you got to be so happy about?" He says, "Michael, I'm ready for this. Next year will be my best year," because he'd been through 81, 82. He had learned that lesson. And it almost, I mean, what we're trying to do here, Gwen, is have agents not have to learn that lesson to get ready for what's coming. Now, I don't think what we're going to go through in 2022, 2023 will be as long or as dramatic as 2008, 2009, but we don't know. And what you said was just over prepare. What's the worst thing that could happen from being really ready for the market shift?
Exactly. Because in 8 and 9, nobody predicted that, right? Because it was a really kind of like a trifecta of circumstances between the economy and the housing industry and collusion and all of that stuff that happened. While we don't see any of those signs right now of like a looming crash or something like that, we don't know, and we didn't know then. So then I thought I was prepared. Now I'm going to over prepare. What is the worst that can happen?
The other thing on top of all that is there's a lot of agents, like you said, that if you've been in the business for the last 7 or 8 years, there's a lot of skills that are going to be required to not only survive but thrive this new market that haven't been practiced regularly or even learnt, or there's skills that are extremely rusty, negotiations, pricing properly, really sharp, all those things that are going to take those skills that you in 36 years have learned over time. A lot of these agents are going to be forced to sort of learn these skills and get pretty good at them real quick. That's another thing on top of it, is the skills that people just haven't utilized perhaps ever.
Correct. I don't know that I'm going to be skipping down the halls, but I'm not afraid of this downturn. Even as bad as it was last time, I'm not afraid. I am prepared. So what I did, and I would recommend right now, is exactly what you're talking about. Get your credentials. You have a few more days on the market. It's not frenetic. You should be investing right now. And by investing, I mean investing in your skill set. I'm not very popular when I say I really believe that real estate should be at least a 2-year degree. And that should be probate and trust, negotiation, digital marketing, psychology, for gosh sakes. Those skills need to be developed, or you are not going to last through this.
You said a word there that I think agents really need to, either they get it or they don't get it. And the word that you said was invest. I hear a lot of people say, why would I spend my money on that? And spend is money that goes out with no real return on it. Invest means you're going to put something in at hoping to get something greater in return. Investing in your education, investing in your skill set.
In this industry, we've been using terms and we've been giving awards for, I'm not going to say the wrong things. Of course, production volume, all that kind of stuff is important. But really, it's getting through to closing. It's not converting a lead. It's not winning a listing. It's none of that kind of stuff. It's getting the client to the closing and onto the journey that they want. And it's sort of the end of that isn't as glorified as it should be in terms of your skill to do that. And it's going to matter because you have inexperienced agents getting distressed listings. You depend on their skill to get to closing. And so if they don't have that skill and you don't have that skill, there's going to be 6 outs here on a side. So we have to be collaborative. Have to give grace. You have to help that agent get to the closing table to suit your own client stuff. And you have to really advocate for investing in your knowledge so that, yes, you go through all that, spend the marketing, get the listing, but my gosh, get to closing.
Absolutely. You said something to me that was sort of one of the things that helped you get through 2008, 2009. You know, you sort of adopted full time, and you were talking about creating a simplified persona.
Yeah.
And I asked you what that meant before we press record, and it has to do with cat everness a little bit, right? So talk about how you've simplified your persona and how it's had an impact not only getting through the market, but as your life moves forward, because I think these are the things people need to hear. This is what success for me looks like.
I think if we're honest with ourselves, real estate agents come with a persona. For me, I'll tell you what my ideal of it was. It's, the white car, it's the cell phone, it's the designer bag, it might be designer shoes, it might, it's that whole persona. The nails are perfectly done, etc. And that persona has changed over the years. That it went from a 5-pound bag phone to a pager but it evolves, and we just keep buying into it and buying into it and buying into it. And then when 8 and 9 hit, I was the epitome of that persona, the nice house, the nice car, the whole thing. That was your evidence of success. Well, now we have different ways to show our evidence of success. And I think it's really unhealthy to put it into material things. That's what 8 and 9 told me. Redefine success, redefine your persona. So of course, the Hunger Games didn't come out until 12, and I was on the rebound in 12, but I had begun it in 8 and 9 when I decided to redefine myself, and I recreated my success persona. And that was, I pretended like everybody in the world was out for my last dollar. My job was to stay in business and to stay in my house and to, win at this and to not go down in flames. And so my persona was simplified. I did not buy designer clothes at all. I bought clothes from Land's End and Target and whatever. And I stopped getting my nails done and did them myself and got pretty good at it. And I got pretty good at cooking Thai food and, making my own coffee and grinding my own beans was the plus. I created this simplified persona, and I loved it so much that much of that carried through after the rebound. And I remember seeing Hunger Games for the first time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was totally what I did. And it was healthy.
These really impactful lessons that we learn in life, and they don't necessarily need to be business lessons, sometimes need to be walked yourself before you can really internalize it. Do you think we are going to see a lot of agents fail and leave the industry because they're unaware of what's coming?
For sure. My dad had a saying when I was little, even a blind squirrel can find an acorn every now and again. And that might sound a little bit brutal, but that's where we've all been. You did not need skills to sell a lot of homes and be successful in 2021. And I think it's given a lot of agents a lot of false self-confidence because there weren't really skills required. And I see them talking about, oh, I negotiated this or that. Well, I was on the other end. You didn't negotiate. You had to give away the store. That's how you won the deal. But it's going to come into play now, and the skills are not there, and they're going to lose. And it's unfortunate because there's families on the other end of that income.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to lose both the newer and experienced agent that doesn't have those skills, and we're also going to lose a lot of the older agents who kept their license active because they knew, as an experienced agents, these were some good years. They were ready for retirement 4 years ago, but it was a good market, so they weren't going to hang it up. And now that's got difficult, this is their call to say, okay, it's time to go on vacation for the next 30 years of my life, and I'm done. So I think we're going to lose sort of both bookends, and we'll lose people in between, but it's going to be based on skill and execution of both offense and defense. We've been talking about defense, and I want to stay on defense for a little bit longer with you before I move to offense, because I think it's both to be successful when the market shifts. defensively when it comes to paring down, making sure that you're spending your money wisely. Offense, get smarter at the skills that it takes, see the opportunities. So the question is, what financial lessons have you learned that you learned in 2008, 2009?
The largest one is that homes don't always increase in value. If you look back since 1981, we have had 6 shifts, or economic recessions, I should say. In 6 recessions, real estate values have decreased 2 times, and 2 times only. So our experience is that we're secure. But in, I think it was early 90s or late 80s, we had a 1.9% decrease in value. 1.9, that was it. But in the recession, we had an average, and I'm talking nationally here because Detroit was hit much harder than this, but we had nationally, it was 19.7. So we learned from that recession that home value is not a given. So number one, stop tapping your equity like it's a water fountain. I know people who were refinancing and, going to Europe and, buying cars and, all of this kind of stuff. That's just nonsense. Those are poor decisions. Reading Profit First and designing my business along with Profit First is a game changer. And I'm going to say with no shortcuts. So I know a lot of people that are trying to do Profit First, but they're doing modified versions and it's not working so well because they think some of that stuff doesn't make sense. Just follow the recipe. Don't leave out the baking soda. It's not that hard. That has been a game changer because then when you are budgeting on percentages and you're putting X amount for taxes, X amount for owner's pay, X amount for operating expenses, X amount for savings, X amount for investing, and you keep those percentages, that builds wealth and you can ride the tide through any market. We are still on those percentages. And as a result of that, have gained rental properties and bought a house on the lake, which is modest compared to a lot of people, but I'm on the lake. That's all I need. There's a lot to learn in there.
I'm incorporated. About 2008, 2009, they allowed agents to incorporate themselves. I am known to the public as Michael Thorne Personal Real Estate Corporation. And so what it allowed me to do, I didn't know this was going to happen. I was just incorporating because it was a smart business thing to do. But what it did was it forced me to treat my business like a business. I am an employee of myself. I pay myself a paycheck that goes in the bank account that I share with my wife. Beforehand, I'd say to my wife, hey, we need to do some advertising. So it's coming out of our personal banking account. I need to invest in a new real estate camera. It's coming out of our personal bank account. And I think a lot of agents, whether they can incorporate or not, should be running their business like that. You should be paying yourself for your services. You should have the money that comes in, says, hey, our business has X amount of money in the bank account. Is it time to invest in this? You can see the way the money comes out. Beforehand, when that money got into my personal bank account and then came out of my personal bank account back into my business, it was like I was taking that money away from my kids' education and dinner on the table instead of it being a business decision to invest in my business, whether that was education or going to a conference or buying marketing. Pay yourself. If you were to give yourself a salary, you would run your business very differently.
Exactly. And we did do a sub-S corporation in the US. And that means that I get a salary and it goes into my bank account because let's face it, if you're a real estate agent, your bank account is a liar. It will lie to you on a daily basis. That money is not yours. So you have to separate always. First of all, even if you're not incorporated, you never have personal expenses commingled with business expenses. You have a separate bank account for that kind of stuff. That's square one. LLC at the very minimum, and a sub-S corporation, of course, talk to your CPA. That's my disclaimer. That was the turning point for us, is treating it like a business. Exactly, Michael, and understanding that money, it might look good, but it's not all yours. And we're living our lives on that big number. Mm-hmm. And you can't really get your head around what is my lifestyle until you understand the portion of that belongs to you. And you need to be happy with that. And it's not the Ruby Award, the Diamond Award, the Platinum Award, and how much you sold and how much you closed. It's how much you kept.
Amen.
It's how much you kept. And what you kept is okay. If that gives me a $400,000 house, I win. I'm going to be happy in a $400,000 house. If it's a $4 million house, I win. I'm going to be happy there. So your lifestyle and your happiness should not depend on any number except the real one.
Love it. A lot of that is defense, defending against bad markets by being financially wise and all this sort of stuff. But I think there's a component where people don't see the offense of a shifting market. And I want to spend a couple minutes on the offense. When someone asks me, Michael, how's the market? They say to me all the time, you always have a positive answer to say. You're always positive. Yes. If it's a seller's market, it's good for sellers. If it's a buyer's market, it's good for buyers. If it's a balanced market, it's good for everyone. As an agent representing all those people, it's a good market. We have to realize for us as agents that we're walking into a new market that's going to benefit the buyer more than the seller for the first time in 7, 8, 9 years. And there's a lot of your clients that are in their 50s and 60s that have won over the last 7 years in the way of equity, that have 27-year-old kids with college debt that now is an opportunity to help them get into the real estate market. But I think it's our job as agents to articulate to our clients and the general public, here's what's happening in the market. Here's who has a chance to win in this market, and here's how you win. The reason why 2009 was our best year to date as a team is we had a lot of people that had been sitting on the sidelines for so long. At the time, 2008, I was like 35 years old. All of my friends didn't own real estate, and we all said, now's the time to go. And they bought real estate. We have to articulate that to our buyer. What steps are you taking as you prepare to say, okay, here's where the opportunity is, and capitalize on it?
I think number one, agents are not taught how to read numbers. And that is where the fundamental skill set starts. And you should be measuring every single morning. You should be looking at how many new listings came on the market, how many reductions were there, how many days on market last month was a house in that price band, because our business goes by price bands. It's going to be different for somebody that is listed, at 200 to 300 than somebody that's listed at 600 to 700. You have to know your market, and we haven't had to do that. There's very little skill in that. Once you interpret that, we can say, okay, our average list to sale price last month was 115%. This month is 101.9%.
Yeah.
So know the data, and that is an investment.
And once you know it, the next skill set is to learn how to articulate what you know.
Exactly.
Once you have the ability to articulate what you know, then you're able to educate the potential buyers and sellers. And if you educate them, that builds know, like, and trust, and they will use you. Generally in our marketplace, people move up 3 or 4 times, and they move down once or twice. That's typically what happens in our marketplace. I think that's fairly normal for most marketplaces, moving up 4 times, down twice. It makes more financial sense for people to move up in a down market than it does to move up in an up market. If you have a $200,000 home and you're moving to a $400,000 home and the market's gone up 10%, your property's gone up $20,000, the house you're buying has gone up $40,000, you're down $20,000 in that gap. If the market is moving down, it makes more sense to move up. And once again, it comes back to our job as agents to educate ourselves and then educate the public. There's a lot of people now that have been waiting for an opportunity to get that next home that has the rental suite in it or whatnot. In a down market, financially, if you have the equity, it makes more sense to move up in a down market. It comes down to understanding the opportunities and articulating once again. And I don't think perhaps we as an industry are very good at that. I think we fight a lot with the newspapers. They say things and our voice isn't as loud as the media. And the other thing about the media is a lot of the stuff that you're hearing, I'm sure for you too as well, Gwen, they're still talking about stuff that was happening 3 months ago, 6 months ago. And we know the market's shifted. Exactly. And it confuses the public.
Totally agree with that. We typically move up 3, down 2. But also, Michael, I want us to be careful about putting the life anchor weight on the economy and the finances. Roger and I, you guys probably all know our story. We got married because we were silly, 6 weeks out of high school, silly in love. Evidently, it worked. We bought our first house. The interest rates were 12.5%.
Yep.
That's just what they were. I got my real estate license in 1986. Interest rates were there. So we bought that house. Then we refinanced to 10.5. Then we refinanced to 9. Then we refinanced to 8 and then 7. Made some money as the market moved up, and then we moved out. When should you buy a house is when it makes sense. you can't just wait for the economy. If you're a single person and then you get married, now you have one or two kids. Yes, be mindful of the interest rates, but buy when you need to buy. Guard your lifestyle. This is not a dress rehearsal. Enjoy yourself. Buy within your means. Refinance when you can.
Now it's time for Been There, Done That.
Tell him he gives me a cup of coffee, I'll answer his questions.
We're on to our rapid fire round of 7 questions focused on our guest's years of real estate experience. All right, Gwen, question number 1. You've moved to a new area. What would the number one thing you'd be looking for in a new brokerage?
Relevancy, culture, and consistency. Do the same thing the same time so I know what I'm getting into, and be relevant. Know the industry and prepare your agents to thrive in that.
Question number 2. I think we just spent 25 minutes talking about it, but here we go. What advice would you give an agent who's never experienced a dramatic market shift to help them get the most out of a changing market?
Well, let me bullet point wrap that up. Shifting is the decision. You decide to be something that you have not been, and you need to adjust to that.
Number 3, in your business today, what is the single activity or product that gives you the best ROI of your time and or dollars?
It's going to have to be profit first, watching my money, because then everything else goes to that.
Number 4, what is the worst movie you legitimately enjoy?
So many. I'm so sappy. Any Hallmark movie ever. And Failure to Launch. It's so terribly good.
Number 5, what is the best piece of business advice you've received?
Best piece of business advice. Oh, so many, but this one just popped into my head, so I'm going to say it. Congruency. Decide who you are and how you are going to show up, and you show up that way every single time. An example of that for me is I will always, no matter what the situation, exit with class.
Great answer. And number 6, a 30,000-foot view. What is something you wished you could change about the real estate industry?
Education before you get in. To prepare yourself. It'd make it easier on agents. They would fail less, make more money. Consumers would be better protected. That 2-year degree I talked about.
Number 7, in one sentence, how would you sum up the internet?
It's a tool, not a friend. Use it accordingly.
Thanks, Gwen, for being my guest and spilling the beans on what it takes to survive and thrive in a new market. And thank you to the listener for joining Gwen, Daubenmeyer, and myself for a chat about small batch marketplace here at the Real Estate Coffee House. We hoped it brewed up some value for you, and remember to enjoy the grind.
That's this week's episode of the Real Estate Coffee House podcast with your host, Michael Thorne. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. The Real Estate Coffee House podcast is brought to you by Thorne Maisie Bonger's Real Estate Group with Remax Lifestyles Realty in Langley, BC. Thank you for listening.